YouTube. Those of you who are regular visitors to the channel may have noticed that there was a slight change to the intro of this video. Now, I swear to God, I am not about to surrender to the Germans. There is no beret anywhere inside this cabin, and I am not going to go all Marcel Marceau on you. For you younger folks, look it up. Now, what that music is, that is the song of my Haversack. Let me explain. Well, first off, before I start explaining myself, I do want to get some comments, particularly from longtime viewers of the channel, about what you think this new camera I'm using, how it's working, is it better than the other camera? I'm kind of thinking that it is, which is ironic because this thing cost me half as much as the great big one I've been using for a year. So please mention in the comments what you think and if there's anything else, anything I could change in this arrangement. But now, let us go back to my Haversack. And as the title of the video suggests, this ain't a Haversack. Okay, this video that I'm doing right now about my musette bag is inspired by a video I did about a year ago. One that I did pretty much on a lark. I didn't think I'd get anything out of it. I just had something I had to get off my chest about a poopy head. And if you haven't seen the video, I will link to the end of that so you can understand what it is I'm talking about, a poopy head, okay? But there's been a number of comments on that video. A lot of people have seen it. A lot of people have commented on it. And they wanted to know a little bit more about the bag. And I had one commenter ask me how come the bag he got in the mail from What Price Glory looks different than this one. And we'll be showing you why and how towards the end of this video. But right now, let us talk about the music of my people. Okay, if you do any internet research at all on musette bag, and I'll print it down here at the bottom so you can know how to spell it when you do your research, you will find out that a lot of people think that this bag, the musette bag, got its name because the French called the feed bag for a horse a sac de musette. Okay, which that's true, they do call that, but that's not why this is called the sac de musette is not why this is called a musette bag. Okay, modern times, musette bags are known as articles that are given to bicyclists in competition so that they don't have to stop and eat. They can drive continuously. And it's a small bag with food on it that has no clasp on it. It's got an open flap. Okay, no closure at all. And the bicyclist can grab it from one of his support team, throw it over his shoulder, and then reach in there one-handed and grab out whatever kind of chow he's got and eat it. And people think that the word musette bag came from food. Well, it didn't. It came from music. Okay? The musette bag came about, the instrument, musical instrument called the musette de coeur. Ain't my French great? I think so. I don't know if it's right, but sounds good. The musette de coeur is a bagpipe, okay? And originally, the music that you heard at the beginning of this video, it was that kind of music was played with a bagpipe type instrument, okay? And if you look at this picture of an early musette de coeur, you will see how it resembles the shape of this bag, not only in the frontal version, but the fact that it has a bellows type expansion. Okay, You could get this wet and fill it full of air, and it would look like a musette de queue, which is why they call this the musette bag. Okay, it's a early 19th century peasant civilian type thing, similar to the German Haversack, which is the derivation of the Haversack. And today we would call this a Haversack simply because we like to shorten names and not have quite so many names for the same thing that does the same thing as other things. Okay, but musette is quite a bit different from a haversack in that it has the ability to expand, and it has a couple of different pockets. Now, I'm going to go out in the kitchen and open this bag up and show it to you in detail. But before we do this, let's look at a French dude with a musette de cour. Okay, here's the close-up. This is my bag. This is a bag, a musette bag I have been using since about 2014, something like that. It's about 10 years. It's held up well. I oiled and treated the leather, and I'm going to show you how I did that so that you can get this same appearance. Okay, this is from What Price Glory, and we'll get a little bit more detailed look. But the one thing you can see here, and the reason why it's called the musette, is how much it resembles that French bagpipe in that it is about bell-shaped, and it has a bellows arrangement. Okay, it is narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. This can be convenient. Okay, see how big the bottom of that bag is? You can throw a lot of stuff in there and still get it out of the top. It has on the side a pocket. I have not treated this leather. I probably should, and while I've got the mink oil out to do the other bag, I'll go ahead and treat this. General consensus of opinion is that this pocket is here to hold the shoulder strap when the shoulder strap is detached. Okay. On the back, there is another pocket. Okay, can you see that? This is a kind of a map pocket, although it can expand. But I do keep my map in here and any other thin item, like possibly a notebook, pencils, that kind of thing. That's what goes in here. It has a button closure. The strap has got these hooks on it. Okay, a little clasp hook on either side. These were originally designed so that they could hang from a British officer's Sam Browne belt, and American officers in the First World War did the same. Okay, you can also detach the strap and attach these hooks to a pair of suspenders and use it as a backpack. Something that's difficult to do with a haversack. We'll open the cargo compartment and look inside, and you can see this is the mainliest thing about the musette bag that I like. The musette bag, particularly of this style. Okay, again, you can see how it opens at the bottom. It's got what I would describe as a cavernous interior. It is divided into two main pockets, and then it has two other smaller pockets. My Upton mess kit can fit in here, although I don't use that when I'm in the field because it's vintage, and I don't like to use vintage metalware. you see how it's constructed. There's a leather reinforcement for the buckle down here. This is very, very well constructed. Again, I have had this 10 years. It has been in the field with me. It has been in World War I trenches with me. It has been camping with me. I love this thing. Okay, it just looks so incredibly cool, but that is overshadowed by its utility. Okay, so now at this point you're saying to yourself, Sarge, where's the history? Where did this come to be camping gear? These musette bags. You know, so far you've told us about French bagpipes and you've shown us the bag, but how did it become camping gear in the United States? Well, as I mentioned, the bag is, it looks like the musette de queue, which was actually invented in the 1700s. The 1880s comes in when the type of music, the musette traditionnelle that we played at the beginning of this, came into being. Today, that music is played with an accordion. Back then, it was played with a musette de queue. Okay, the bag carried by French peasants was also called the musette, much in the same way that the German peasants was called a Haversack, okay, which became Haversack. In the late 19th century, somewhere in the 1870s, 1880s, the British adopted a similar bag that they called a musette bag for use by British officers. This picture here that we're going to fling up on the screen is of British officers' kit in the Boer War in the 1890s. You can see that on the, I mentioned on the bag that you can detach the strap and it has these clips. Again, these were designed to hang off the side of the British Sam Browne belt. So by the First World War, the musette had become a standard piece of British gear, British campaign gear. Much of the car camping furniture and accessories of the motor camping craze in the 1920s is the designs are based on British campaign furniture and campaign gear. By the 1890s, the British had perfected the art of campaigning, which meant that you were basically camping in semi-permanent camps so that you could go out on expeditions and subjugate brown people and take their natural resources. And the musette was part of that. Now, when war was declared by the United States in 1917 against the Germans, getting us into the First World War, our army, our uniforms, and our gear, it's fairly drab. The United States, the leaders of the time, really didn't go into any kind of decorations and prettiness on their uniforms, with the exception of the dress uniform, the full dress uniforms. But uniforms for in the field were fairly plain. Okay, we did not have things that we have today, such as shoulder sleeve insignia. We gave out hardly any medals at all. The only insignia our soldiers, our enlisted men in particular, had was little brass discs on their collar that would indicate their unit and the fact that they were in the Army, as if wearing the uniform didn't give you a clue. So when our troops got overseas, they look and they see our allies, the French and the British, and they're all prettied up. They've all got gold braid, their medals hanging off of their chests. They got that fancy Sam Brown belt that denotes that you are an officer. Uh, and our guys said, how come we can't look as pretty as those boys? And they started, our guys started to do things on their own because they're U.S. Army soldiers. And a lot of times U.S. Army soldiers don't need to be told what to do. And a lot of times they'll go ahead and do stuff without even asking. Some of the things they did was they wore a different style hat. They adopted the British, I'm not going to use the Army name for it, but what became to be known as the overseas cap, which is an envelope style cap. United States Army officers adopted the Sam Brown belt that would denote you could be able to tell a guy was an officer at a distance because he had this belt on. And they adopted the equipment that hung off of that Sam Brown belt to include the musette bag. And these bags were fairly cheap, widely available in Europe and in France. A number of enlisted people bought these things, particularly when they were on their way home. Okay, they would go to some French store, sitting outside the port of debarkation where they were going to get on the boat to go home. They would sit in these camps waiting for their turn to get on the boat. They went into town and bought these things so that they could carry them. Most of their gear would be packed up and put in the hold of the ship. They wouldn't carry it around themselves. And if they wanted to have anything personal, stuff that they could use every day, well, they got one of these bags. So consequently, starting in about 1921, these things started showing up in the United States in fairly large quantities. And of course, anybody who was going to go out into the outdoors saw the utility of these bags. Up until that point, most backpackers, trekkers, or campers were using Army surplus haversacks. And that was still in the 1920s in particular. Pre-World War I haversacks were fairly popular for backpackers and campers. The musette bags started getting folded into that mix. Abercrombie and Fitch started selling their own version of the musette bag, which is strikingly similar to those bought overseas. As did Woods Manufacturing up in Canada. A number of outlets would imported musette bags to sell in outfitters and things like that. Backpacks did not really become all that popular in the United States until about the middle 30s. Okay, once the Trapper Nelsons started catching hold. But for most of the first 30 years or so of the 20th century, the haversack or musette and horseshoe roll were the primary backpacking gear that you would see on the trail. This picture I'm going to throw up on the screen here. This is a picture that I have been using in the Bannerman's Camp Facebook page. This is a group of backpackers that belong to the Smoky Mountains Hiking Club. If you look here, there's not a backpack in the bunch. They've all got horseshoe rolls. Some of the horseshoe rolls are Civil War surplus blankets, gum blankets, ponchos. There's one fellow wearing 2 World War I gas mask bags. So this type of this style of backpacking, this style of trekking was quite popular, and musette bag was part of it. In 1921, the Army adopted the musette bag as a standard for issue to officers. Officers actually had the opportunity to buy them, and to troops who were mounted or motorized, who needed to carry stuff but couldn't sit down with the pack on their back and drive on the truck. Okay. This later morphed into a pattern made in 1936 that was even more widely issued, and they were very widely issued in the Second World War. However, musettes and the horseshoe roll style started coming out of favor as the Trapper Nelson started gaining favor, and as lighter packs, such as the Yucca pack made by the Boy Scouts, came into vogue. I like using my musette bag when I do period camping. I use it with a backpack if I use a backpack, and I use it with a horseshoe roll if I use a horseshoe roll. It is very, very, very handy. The fact that it is bell-shaped, okay, that it's narrower at the top and wider at the bottom, makes it, it carries better, in my opinion. It's easier to reach in and grab stuff. A haversack can be very cumbersome. They get very big. I have done Spanish-American War living history where a haversack worn across this shoulder and then a canteen across this shoulder, and you run, that stuff flaps back and forth and smacks you in the shins, something fierce if you're not careful, or if you don't tie it down with a belt. So there you go. That's the musette bag. Okay. And again, I think, my own personal opinion, is that it is superior to a haversack. And that may be why Army surplus haversacks from pre-World War I started dropping off the market, except for Army surplus dealers like Francis Bannerman and the big manufacturers like Abercrombie & Fitch, L.L. Bean, Woods, Grant Holden and Graham. They were selling the musette pattern. Today, we call a musette a haversack, and I think that's a shame. I really think we need to know the difference between the two, and I think maybe you could give it a try if you're a modern day bushcrafter and see whether or not you like a musette over a haversack. Try it out. In the meantime, we'll see you down the trail.